Blame Trump for Russian collusion. Fail. Blame Trump for interference with aid to Ukraine. Try to impeach him. Fail. Blame Trump that he doesn't actually love the veterans and he has a disdain for wounded warriors and he thinks that veterans who died in battle are losers. Fail. Accuse him of killing people with coronavirus and purposely hiding information from the American people. That's the latest attack, but waiting in the wings is Adam Schifferbrains, who has another whistleblower to corroborate Russian collusion. Because, you know, Adam just can't stand being out of the limelight. They'll put that to the side. So, old Joe tries to blame Trump for the riots and the civil unrest in the country. That's been an epic fail. So now we'll accuse him of murder with a brand new book from Bob Woodward. And it's going to fail because the president gets defended from an unlikely ally. Now, most of you have probably heard the audio tape where the president has said he downplayed the virus. He knew how deadly it was. It was floating in the air. This is more dangerous than the flu. Mr. President, let me say this, and this is the one area where I have disagreed with you from jump. Ever allowing these so-called experts, these so-called pandemic theorists, manipulate you and push you into this entire charade, this entire hogwash of this pandemic. It's the one area in your administration, in your term as president, you blinked. And I get it. I understand that, first of all, politics was never your thing, but you have a great instinct of what this country needed to get back on track financially, with our economy, what the American people needed to be able to be re-energized and have faith in America, to believe in America again, to make America great again. And I know nobody wants to be accused of being a killer. Nobody wants to be accused of that your decisions cost millions of lives. And so when you get surrounded by the swamp masquerading as health experts, I get it. I understand. But a lot of us were telling you, don't. Why you gave an interview to Bob Woodward. Now, you said on Hannity that, Woodward's a hit artist. This is what he does. Well, yeah. This guy hasn't gotten over the fact that he took down Nixon. And he is salivating and he is into premature ejaculation, thinking he's got you now. Now, part of this is already blowing up on Woodward himself. And it's coming from Twitter and the extreme left who want to know, if you've known for months that the president could have taken action that he didn't take and that he was downplaying this just to keep people feeling good and the economy moving and it cost lives, and you said nothing until now to sell a book. You mean the peasants with the pitchforks are now after Woodward on a certain level, so this ought to be interesting to watch that little drama play out just for the fun of it. Of course, the mainstream media salivating over this. Bozo over there at the Washington Compost, just salivating, leaking this out, dripping this out. And of course, here we go. It's time to sell some books because we're 50 plus days out from the most important election of our lives. We got Biden out there, now putting one coherent sentence together that he can finally read off the teleprompter. Trump killed people. And all he has to do is kind of remember that that's the same line that Cuomo was saying. But then comes Dr. Fauci. Now, you all know how I feel about Dr. Fauci. I would get medical advice from Dr. Pepper before I would get medical advice from Dr. Fauci. But Dr. Fauci came out and defended the president. In fact, I find it interesting that And all of the stockpile videos that you can get your hands on through Fox News, this little exchange that he had on Fox News defending the president, well, you can watch it on Fox, but you can't get it anywhere else, and it's not archived anywhere on YouTube. So you'll have to forgive the crudity of what you're about to see as far as the production value. But nonetheless, Dr. Fauci came to the defense of the president.
Let me get your response to this. President Trump, according to Woodward, says back in February that he knew how serious this was going to be, but all the way into March said he always wanted to play it down because he didn't want to create a panic. You were there through that whole thing. Was that the playbook, or was that the president just going his own direction?
You know, I don't think so, John. I mean, I don't recall anything different than in our discussions that we had with the president, that he said things quite similar publicly. So I didn't read the book. I didn't really go over any of the text since it just came out. But, you know, when in my discussions and the discussions of other task force members with the president, we're talking about the reality of what was going on. And then when we would get up in front of the press conferences, which were very, very common after our discussions with the president, he really didn't say anything different than we discussed when we were with him. So I may not be tuned in to the right thing that they're talking about, but I didn't really see any discrepancies between what he told us and what we told him and what he ultimately came out publicly and said.
So did you get a sense that he was or wasn't playing this down?
No, I didn't. I didn't get any sense that he was distorting anything. I mean, in my discussions with him, they were always straightforward about the concerns that we had. We related that to him. And when he would go out and I'd hear him discussing the same sort of things, he would often say, we just got through with a briefing with the group from the task force, and would talk about it. So, no, it may have happened, but I have not seen that kind of distortion.
Okay, so back in February, according to the Woodward book, the National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien went in with his deputy Matt Pottinger and said, this is the most serious crisis that you're going to face, at least in the immediate future, because this thing is really bad. The president seemed to acknowledge that it was really bad, but then we saw him come out and say it's going to magically go away. It's no more serious than the flu. I mean, the conversations, I know there's probably not a lot of things you can tell us about the conversations with the task force and the president, but was it your sense that this was very serious, but that the public messaging was a little bit different?
You know, John, I really am hesitant to comment on that, because I don't know in what context we're asking that question. I mean, obviously, when we would be speaking to the president, we talk about the cold facts. He would get them. You know, often he would want to, you know, make sure that the country doesn't get down and out about things. But I don't recall anything that was any gross distortion in things that I spoke to him about.
Right. So you were comfortable.
I don't think he ever distorted things that I spoke to him about.
Mm-hmm. So you were comfortable with the way that he was delivering the information that was discussed in the task force to the public?
Yeah, but remember, I'm a small frame in the big picture of what goes on. But, you know, I would go in, Dr. Burks and I and Dr. Redfield, we would talk to him about the things that were going on out there. And then we would get up. I know you were in the audience often. We would get up and go in front of the cameras and talk a little bit about what the discussions were. And within that context, John, I don't think he said much different than what we said when we were in the Oval Office.
Now, on the one hand, there are critics of Dr. Fauci, and I'm talking about the far, far left, who think that, you know, we still should be on complete shutdown, wearing masks, basically wearing, you know, a complete body condom, you know, to protect us from getting, you know, the death virus. You know, it was Fauci who said even into March, no, we don't need to be wearing face masks. No, we don't need to be alternating our lifestyle in any way. Aha! He was in on this with Trump to lower the panic. So were Democrats. You have Nancy Pelosi in Chinatown right after the president enacted a travel ban from China, saying it's safe and this is not the Chinese fault, and so go to Chinatown. I'm here and I'm perfectly safe, and I'm not wearing a mask, and I'm not getting my hair done either. I'm eating Chinese food. It's wonderful. You had Chuck E. Cheese Schumer encouraging people, along with Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo, encouraging you to go to Chinatown in New York City. You had many officials from the New York City City Hall talking about how safe New York was and the president was overreacting. Well, now all of a sudden he didn't react enough and he was hiding information, and you got Fauci now saying no, he wasn't hiding any information. Now, the president, by his own admission, he didn't want to create panic. What Woodward did was twist the president's words when he admits on tape and in his interviews with Woodward, yes, he did not want to create a panic. The choice of words, and sometimes the president doesn't always use the best choice of words to say he downplayed, was not the way Woodward and the lying legacy corporate corrupt mainstream media and Joe Biden want you to take it. That he lied, that he deceived. And Fauci makes that distinction. Fauci said, the president doesn't want people freaking out, but whatever we discussed among the task force and the recommendations we made, he went out and that's exactly what he did. So the president didn't downplay in the sense of lying or hiding, but that's not the narrative you are going to hear now ad nauseum from CNN and PMSNBC and the rest of the fake news, lying, corrupt media, including some at Faux Pas News, formerly known as Fox News, which is why they're hiding this interview. But then, in the book, apparently, Fauci is quoted as talking about how incompetent the president is. And so he was asked about it.
I don't want to put you on the spot here, and I know you talk a lot about the idea that noise sort of gets in there and clouds the message, but you are quoted in the Woodward book as well. According to the Washington Post, Fauci at one point tells others that the president, quote, is on a separate channel and unfocused in meetings with, quote, rudderless leadership, according to Woodward. His attention span is like a minus number, Fauci said, according to Woodward. His sole purpose is to get reelected. Right. Is that correct?
If you notice, it was others have said that. Yeah. So, you should ask others. I don't recall that at all. So, in the book, I didn't read the book, but according to what I saw in the newspapers, it says, and others have said that. So, I don't really want to get involved in the kind of stuff that is very distracting to the kind of things that I'm trying to do and that we're all trying to do with this outbreak.
So you would question that account then?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not going to get Fauci invited onto CNN and The View and the rest of the adoring, drooling media, which, has an orgasm every time, he comes on and gives them an interview. Why, he's actually saying he didn't say those things about the president. Other people have said those things. So here again, typical, like the Atlantic article that came out over the weekend, unnamed sources saying that Fauci said that. Well, who was it, Mr. Woodward, that said Fauci said this about the president? Because Fauci is now calling them a liar, which by de facto is calling you a liar, Mr. Woodward. Why would the president give this guy an interview? I'm sure part of it is the president does think that he has the type of ability and personality to win his critics over. He thinks this is a good idea to sit down, quote, with the enemy. How did this all happen? Oh, Lindsey Graham, John McCain's special friend, he set that up. He made that happen. In fact, he even sat in on the first interview. Mr. President, though there have been a couple of times for his own political expedience, Lindsey Graham has defended you. He's not your friend. He's not your friend. He's a Trojan horse. At least lying witness protection Romney lets you know up front he is a Judas. He is a backstabber. He doesn't like you. Neither does Lindsey Graham. He's part of that whole Bush ideology. And there is a part of him that wouldn't mind and could figure out a way to work with Joe Biden if he becomes the president. Because after all, Biden's already said with Kamala Harris, it's going to go back to foreign policy the way it always used to be, i.e., we're going to be doing regime change wars. They've got their eyes set on Syria. You have the military establishment coming after the president because he's called them out on they like to have war because, after all, that's how colonels become generals, 1-star generals become 2-star and 3-star. You gotta accomplish that on the battlefield, so that means you gotta have never-ending battle. Oh, and all of these guys, all of these so-called military experts at the Pentagon, they all receive money from military contractors who make the planes, the bombs, the weapons, and after all, gotta have a place to go play with their new toys. Because this is how they get money. This is how these generals end up as millionaires. It isn't because people are reading the books that they write after they retire. And so you have the John Kellys and the Mad Dog Mattises, these guys who had us in never-ending wars, and yet they're upheld before our young military as these incredible heroes to our young men and young women who are in our military academies like West Point and Annapolis, being taught from their manuscripts and taught from their manuals and reading their books and being told what incredible military strategists these guys are, who keep us in never-ending war, because that's how they receive promotion and that's how they make money. They didn't actually bring us any, what's the word that's eluding me right now? Victory. It was President Trump who put an end to these endless wars. Oh, and he did so by letting the army do what it does best, kill the enemy. This has been one of the most anti-war presidents ever. And not anti-war like the liberal left of the hippie days in the 1960s, who would never go to war for any reason. He doesn't want to see American lives lost and wasted. They're our greatest treasure. And he doesn't want to see the American economy constantly funding never-ending costly wars. Can someone please explain to me what is the strategy of why we want to take out Assad in Syria? What is the military advantage for us regarding Syria? No, nobody can explain that to me. We need to just get out over there completely and have the biggest, baddest military on the planet so that if anybody actually does mess with us, we're ready for the reckoning. That was for 2 centuries of American history how we handled war. We were not invaders. We were not conquerors. We were not empire builders. We were liberators. We would defend our shores and defend our interests, defend our allies. Instead, we're doing all of this interventionary war like it's a really bad science fiction movie that we already know ahead of time who the enemy's going to be and what they're going to do. And this was the Bush doctrine. And this is globalism run amok. And this is what the president has stomped out. This is why he is hated by the military-industrial complex. This is why he is hated by the career politicians, the swamp dwellers on the left and right, because they don't really have an ideology of right and wrong and real conservatism or real liberalism. They're for sale, they're globalists, and this is how they make money. And so now, let's blame him for a pandemic. Let's blame him for this. And out of nowhere, Fauci actually defended him. And so I guess on this point, I have to say, thank you, Mr. Fauci. We'll see if anybody else picks up your interview where you defended the president. That's it for this rant. Thank you so much for watching. Give us a thumbs up. Share this to your social media platforms. Make sure you're a subscriber to the channel and smack the bell and click the word all to get notification of my next rant.